Yes, Elisha, I think now I can pick it up from here. Colleagues, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. You're welcome for this workshop on geospatial techniques in land productivity. And from the expectations, we got some of you are beginners, advanced users, intermediate users, but now for this case, we want to bring everybody on board that when we start processing datasets tomorrow, each one of us should be able to get a few modest images and play around and then figure out how this will be factored in the model.
The other interesting bit from Prof's presentation is that some of us are doing research and are interested in solving problems of our research using this workshop. So we are much welcome to share with you ideas, much as we analyze this data for 10 countries in the IGAD region. And the IGAD region there, it means you're using global data sets that, of course, they come with their challenges, but what we have developed can be customized using your country-specific data sets. For instance, the soil, the NDVI based on the imagery you have gotten, and the administrative boundaries. So today, I want to give an overview, a brief overview of GIS and QGIS in nature. But after this training, I will give you an exercise and try it so that tomorrow when you come, you can share, or probably if in the night you have some time, you can drop in the chat where you're stuck so that you can be assisted. But we are here to learn and assist you, so don't feel challenged or sign out of the workshop because of a plugin which is not working or a component which is not active. So the overview of GIS, as I start, is that, like I said, I'll give an overview of GIS, and then the introduction to the QGIS software.
GIS today, colleagues will all agree that GIS is a tool for everybody, that everyone is using in data collection, storage, analysis, and output. And the gadget that you have at your nearest disposal is your phone. Your phone is a critical tool today for GIS. You're seeing people using GIS to determine distances, to determine locations, to map, and you see if someone is coming to pick you up in Uber, for instance, you activate location, you're basically doing GIS, and you will confirm with me that in the last 10 years we do not have Google Maps in our smartphones, but now Google Maps is here, and for you to manipulate datasets such as Google Maps in your phone, you must have been in a GIS class. So it's something very simple if you do web mapping and then you learn how to upload content online. The applications of GIS are enormous. Like I said, GIS is a tool for everyone, from the urban planners, engineers, business colleagues, people in the environment, politicians. You know, politicians would want to know how many voters are in their constituencies. In education, we are using a lot of GIS in research for everybody. We are doing, analysis in health. You confirm with me that we have coronavirus maps for Africa and highlighting the cases confirmed across various countries on the continent. So GIS is handy here. And in terms of drought and carbon, there's a colleague who asked about about biomass. How do you estimate biomass using remote sensing? This is an example of biomass estimation towards the carbon analysis. But what is critical in GIS is it's not being on a desk and do what you want, but you have to get observations and then you validate. So in GIS, we work with data models. The major ones are vector and raster data models. The data models that we very familiar with are the vectors, but in this training we shall demonstrate the fusion between the vector and the raster models. Because if you have the vector and the raster input in GIS, you come up with outputs in a GIS format, and the outputs can be a map or a table. Now, how would you represent streams, electric poles, district boundaries, or lakes? These fall within the schema of data models in GIS. Like if you look at your Google Maps will show you roads, your Google Maps will show you hotels, schools, restaurants, and it also display lakes in blue color, while the boundaries will be boundaries will have gray colors with some sizable width. This is how it looks like. This is how it looks like in Google Maps. Google Maps will give you vectors, they have demonstrated. It also gives you the attributes. You know, the names of those hotels, the names of fields are referred to as attributes. So each data model, either vector or raster, is appended with an attribute behind. So the attributes basically describe what's in the geometry of the file that you're displaying, or the file what is you have that is stored. Vectors, we have, because we have to get this, vectors shouldn't confuse you. We are just saying vectors are points that represent the hotel or school that you saw or that you have in Google Maps. Vectors are lines that you have as roads in your Google Maps. Polygons are lakes that you'll have like the district boundaries, for example. So we just have to get the acronyms here. You know, you have the vector, the terms, you have the vector, line, point, polygon. So this should not confuse us. It's just a demonstration that if I'm displaying my GPS points, I'm basically talking about point datasets. If I'm displaying roads for any country, I'm talking about lines. And if I'm talking about a lake boundary, I'm basically looking for a polygon. So this is an example of vector data where you have the well, a water source is being represented as a point, a river being represented as a line, lakes being represented as polygon. Now, the vector data sets that we normally have are normally stored as shape files. So a new term is coming in here from vector, point, line, polygon. There's a term coming in here is what we call shape files. Shape file, the short name is SHP. SHP is a geometry file. So when you're displaying data in QGIS, for instance, we will be looking for this geometry file. It's very critical for you to understand that if this data is stored in a folder, you'll see a number of files, but these files have meanings, where you'll see PRJ, that will demonstrate for you the projection. It will contain the projections of that shapefile, and then DBF is accessible in Excel. Then for the rasters, raster datasets are an example of images, and these images, your phone cannot record these images. So whatever you record using your phone, your camera, is a raster in nature. So whatever the satellite images gives you, or whatever you get as a hard copy map and you scan it, it ends up being a raster data. So rasters should not confuse us. It's a common term that we are trying to represent files. You have seen JPEGs as you take photos using your camera, and those JPEGs are represented as rasters when you add it in the software. But what is critical with the rasters, as we move on in the training tomorrow, issues of resolution will come up. I remember someone hinted that why are we using global data sets and then countries like Rwanda are very small. Now, things of resolution are very critical to understand the kind of data sets and the details that you need in an image. And for rasters, when you zoom in, you'll have an image with an arrow of rows and columns, and those columns, sometimes we refer to them as pixels, cells, or grids. And when it comes to a raster, a cell will represent a certain unit in an image. Structure of a raster is in a way that these are represented in reference to the values that you see within the attribute table. Within the rasters, we are more critical to what is visible in an image. For instance, if you're talking about NDVI, we are using MODIS now. MODIS, how will it look? What is the resolution? So all these things are very critical. And we looked at all the products available, but like I said, in this exercise, we did analysis for 10 countries, and in 10 countries, the resolution is very critical. So we use global data sets, but then the results were validated using in-house country-specific data sets. But when it comes to resolution here, we are only interested in the details of an image. Now, the pixels are very critical in understanding and documenting rasters. So pixels, if you have fewer pixels, you will have a blurred image, like compared to if you have an arrow of many pixels, that you have more details of what you have. So sometimes, I know most of you, when you go to buy cameras, or if you go to buy cameras and phones, I don't know if you mind about the megapixels of your cameras. That is a subject for another story. But when it comes to 1 pixel, that's how it looks like. 4 pixels, 25 pixels, the image starts coming out. And then if you have 2,500 pixels, you see the image is clearer. So the more pixels, the clearer the image. And when it comes to resolution, you'll see an 8x8, 4x4, 2x2, and 1 meter image. So resolution is very critical in GIS and remote sensing. If you're doing analysis today, you're seeing people, especially for you who are born in this era, you're seeing so many drones being used in ceremonies, weddings, functions. So all these things are coming up with images, high resolution images, and these images should be used. You're the people we are training now to use these images, interpret and make sense, so that we can make spatial decisions. Now, if you look at some of the satellites we have in space, are designed to provide large-scale coverages of raster images for instance, the models that we shall use, and in terms of resolution, where you have 3 kilometer, 10 kilometer, you will see there are variations in the visibility of the elements within the image. So that's an image of 3 kilometer and then also 10 meter, so that you're able to see the comparison that the lower the resolution, the higher the details. So in terms of spatial resolution, again, you see a 10 by 10, 5 by 5, and then 0.5 by 5. So all these give you an area. So if we start analysis, you must be talking of, if you say, how do you analyze a biomass from using remote sensing? So it also depends, much as you're developing metric equations, which product are you using? Are you using a 30 by 30 satellite image or 10 by 10? So all those factors come in terms of resolution. So if you have more details, you'll have small size, and the small size you should be having a higher resolution, and then higher feature details with lower display. Lower display means if you have if the resolution, most times if the resolution is very good, most machines, most software sometimes display slow these images, what we refer to as rendering in the tools that we use. But if you have grid cells that are wide, you see that the geometry of components that you're trying to capture will also have issues in terms of low feature capturing, though they will display faster because the pixels are big, and then fast processing because of the resolution component. Now, when we talk about rasters here, we are talking of two types. We have a discrete raster and then a continuous raster. What is a discrete raster? A discrete raster is a raster. When I take an image using my phone, that phone or that image that I've taken using a phone or camera is what we refer to as a discrete raster. Or the image that I get from, an optical image that I get from a satellite, that is a discrete raster, the way you see the components here. Or the other bit can also be a land use, because it could be dependent on a theme. For instance, land use. Like I said, in land use, if it is a forest, it will have similar values. If it is a lake, it will also carry similar values. But for continuous, if you went into Google Maps, you'll see what we refer to as the continuous raster. So if you open your Google Maps in your phone, the terrain is a representation of continuous raster. So the values are continuous and they represent height above sea level. Now, these rasters also come with different formats, especially for example, the elevation. You'll see sometimes when we receive data sets, we get them as Geotiffs. Geotiffs are different data formats that we get. You can get these rasters in different ways. Like you can have an ASCII, you can have a grid, you can have an image, but a geotiff is commonly used because of the georeferencing information that comes with it. So when we add the datasets we shall use, for instance, models, you may find that they are in TIFF formats. So TIFF is a format that we should be getting accustomed to when it comes to using images in GIS. So in summary, we solve problems by making spatial decisions in reference to bringing rasters, vectors together to come up with the product that we use to guide our decision makers. So GIS is not about map making, it's not about analyzing. It's not about capturing, but it's about making sense of what we want to do. For instance, you're not going to develop a land productivity map which does not communicate to the decision makers. So it's just the same way that when you go to Google Maps to determine the distances from one point to the other point, you're basically looking at making a final decision. And you know, decision making is very critical, and decision making, you all understand that we all make decisions differently depending on the resources and the severity of the decisions that we intend to make. But we should all understand that we have rasters and vectors, but we can convert from vectors to rasters, and we can also come from rasters to vectors and vectors to rasters. So we can make use of the software to convert from one format to the other. Now, I'll talk briefly about coordinate systems. It's quite a wide topic, but I'll give a few hints about it. Now, these datasets that we pick, either vector or raster, they normally come with the units. So this data can either be in degrees or meters. Most times, if you download these datasets, like if you get modis from the online source, because these are downloadable freely, you'll get these datasets sometimes in degrees. And if they're in degrees, they are basically in geographic coordinate systems. But if I'm working, for instance, in Rwanda, I'm in Ethiopia, and I want to work on a dataset for Oromia. Oromia is a city in Ethiopia. Basically, I'm working at a small scale. I'm able to get this information in meters, for instance. And the units, if the units are in meters, this data sets is basically in the projected coordinate systems. So like I said, we have 2 units, degrees and meters. So if I'm working in meters, I have to know that is probably I'm dealing within components that are within the projected coordinate system. It's a cylindrical system that you see the entire plane of the surface of the Earth. Why do we prefer to work in meters? Sometimes meters, we are able to determine accurate scale, distances, and area. But then you know that degrees are not units of measurement. But what is critical here also for everybody to understand is that in GIS we have datums that we normally use to orientate ourselves from the origins of the latitude and longitude. So datums, we basically try to match them with the fluids of the Earth's surface in order to have accurate local coordinates. So what is critical here, or the key message here, is that when we move to the software, you'll be seeing that you'll be seeing a term WGS 84, which is World Geodetic System. That here the reference is we're defining the locations across the globe, and it's a datum which is being used preferred in GIS today. But we must appreciate that there are other local datums that surveyors, that anybody in the GIS and surveying field will exploit or use. So you'll find that different countries have different datums, but in this case, when you see the word WGS 84, it basically means we are trying to determine our locations and determine measurements based on the global system, which is the World Geodetic System. And you'll see, if you're in Rwanda and you're developing maps, you'll see WGS 84, UTM, Zone 35 for south or mid. So, like if, for instance, you're using a GPS will give you this data straight, most DPSs, especially for the US system, you'll be seeing WGS 84 straight compared to. Now, one component that colleagues, I want you to appreciate is that countries are being given codes. In reference to the European Petroleum Agency, they have given them codes, what Mercator divided and defined as UTM zones. So each country has different, or lies within a different zone. So for instance, if I'm training GIS in Rwanda, I know that is zone 35 south. If I'm doing some bit of training in Dar es Salaam, I know that is zone 37. If I'm in Nairobi, the zone is 30. So this zone is very critical if you're dealing with country-specific data sets. So, like in this case, as I said, why do we prefer to use meters? Like we want to know the measurements, we want to have accurate scales, but then at country level, we use or refer to the UTM zones. These zones will demonstrate, or they will be handy as we come to the practical bit. Now, what are the sources of GIS data? Sources of GIS data sets are many. You can use base maps. We have seen topo maps. You can use aerial photos, reports. These are analog data sets that we normally bring in GIS through a process, what we call digitization. So you can use either heads up or manual digitization process to convert the topo map into a GIS or a digital format. The ones that we receive that are already in a digital format are majorly the ones we get from satellite images, the ones you get from the GPS units. If you went outside with your GPS to pick coordinates, you come up with the digital data sets that are basically input into a data. Then there are also existing databases worldwide, for instance, population. You also have population databases. In your respective countries, you have existing GIS administrative layers, boundaries, land use that you use in your countries. But I want us to agree here that much as we have these different data sources, it's not just a walk-in your country. For instance, if you're in Ethiopia, you may not easily go to the Ethiopian agency and they just give you land use rates. You may not go to Rwanda Spatial Agency or Kenya or Tanzania, and these data sets that are in-country data sets are very sensitive. So you'll find that some of these data sets are not easily accessible for use. For instance, if you ask yourself today, am I able to get a soil map, a recent soil map for my country? Am I able to get a recent land use for my country? Am I able to get a recent population data set for my country? Ask yourself that question, all those issues, or a number of ideas that I'm bringing on board here. So, data access in GIS is tricky for any country. It's not easily accessible, but we must appreciate that there are efforts by international agencies, by colleagues in a number of initiatives. You have seen open street mapping. You have seen USGS for satellite images. So there are data sets that are actually available online that are freely accessible and used and permitted for publication and research. So these are examples for data sets that you can build on. Some government agencies within our countries deposit GIS data sets in different hubs that you can go online and access. Like I said, sometimes it requires patience, it requires formal requests for you to get data sets that you need for your particular country to work. So you'll see if you need a building, road network, you need global land covers, you need the weather, you need elevation. There are websites, these are global websites that you can access and use these data sets. So this thing, GIS, how do we solve it? By the way, there's a difference between GIS and remote sensing, but in this class I'm dwelling more on the GIS aspect. My colleague will give a highlight of remote sensing and then define the product that the system gives to understand. Now, in terms of GIS software, depending on the training, you'll see that most people who are trained in ArcGIS will always prefer to work in ArcGIS. Those who were trained in TerraSet, which used to be Idrisi, they will tell you image processing can only be done in Idrisi. Those ones who have used the TNT MIPS will always argue that TNT MIPS is the best. Then in terms of free software, before 2002, we used to use GVSIC and JumpGIS by then. So GVSIC used to be, by the very good software with grass. Now that QGIS has come on board, so QGIS has come as a versatile software which has encompassed grass. It has also added on it has also OTP, it's called OTP tool. It has also added on Saga. We used to have Saga as an independent software. You can also download separately, but Saga is also incorporated in QGIS. So QGIS is becoming versatile and usable and probably cheaper for countries now to manage the GIS datasets, that it has various tools that can be accessed within the platform. You can also carry out remote sensing tools. So this is a spectrum of GIS software that we are saying free. They are basically downloadable. They may not be free, but they are just freely accessible online. Now, how do we visualize GIS data? One, you can visualize GIS data in an Excel file. You can visualize your data in maps. You can visualize your findings in form of graphs. You can visualize your findings in form of tables as well, pie charts, bar graphs, maps, and you have seen also that there's colleagues also adding infographics into GIS that you can harmonize all this. Now, why do we have maps? You know, we all design ourselves as we move out of our homes. Now, the way you design yourself today, from the shirt, the dress, is just the same way you would think about designing a map for your politician, a map for your boss, a map for publication for the wider audience. That this map, I need to have what are the elements that are important and how are they aligned in the map. You will see that we normally have direction sometimes of the most important information and then the least important. Where do people start to look at the map contents? Where that's generally a map will have a general map, an inset map, a locator map, and then the publication details of the producer, in addition with the map credits, the publication date, the person who developed it. So the elements of a map, generally we have titles, scales, legends, the body of the map, a north area, what most people refer to as a key, midlines, and date of publication. So I want to go into QGIS now. So QGIS is an open source software which is available online for download, whether you're using Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can select, depending on your machine, that you can easily access this tool, and then you install on your machine. And as I said earlier, that QGIS is now a tool that we are training in education institutions. We are using QGIS now in government institutions, private institutions. So it's a tool that if you get this knowledge today, you do not need to run about software. Like those days we would run about software. You go out to so and so, you go to a company that is licensed to distribute the software, but this software is now available for everybody to use. And then it operates in a number of systems, and it's just like Map Info, which is ArcGIS, and it's an alternative that is available. But most of you, when we train you, you start running around for data, you start running around for software, you start running around for machines. But what is critical for me or for you is to have the knowledge of GIS. If you have this knowledge, you can get this laptop wherever you are and you start working. Because when we even worked on this model, it was during when the world was being hit by the pandemic, and then this required that probably we have to work within the open source platform of the global datasets and the general available softwares in line with the country-specific key holders who are consulted on our outputs. So QGIS, like I said, it's a simple software, and all these GIS softwares, if you learn one, then you know the other, or you know the rest, because they're almost the same. They normally have a menu bar which is common with edits, view, layer, settings. What QGIS has is a plugin. Plugin gives us an extension of added functionality, but the other aspect is if you're carrying out simple analysis, you're basically running it under vectors, rasters, and processings. Panels, we have panels and toolbars. Toolbars will just give us added functionalities or shortcuts to functionalities of what we want to do. So when working with vectors, you can change the symbols, you can change the colors, you can change the labels of that vector. You can also do functional analysis. You can find out your areas of study. You can do operations, you can select features, you can edit attribute tables, you can use field calculator to remove or add fields, you can edit, you can digitize. Digitize means transforming what has been scanned into a digital format. And after digitizing, you can run topological errors in the tool. While working with rasters, you can change the symbols, you can change band rendering, you can increase the transparency of properties, you can use a raster calculator, which you can run all those simulation or programming with raster datasets. One thing colleagues must understand here is that in our model, because the model we have rasters and vectors, how did we bring all this together? In GIS, if you're to do simulations, you have to convert from vectors to rasters. So most of the soils, most of the moistures, other data sets that we use were later converted into rasters for simulation and output in terms of productivity. Now, in terms of spatial analysis, because the tool also gives you aspects to carry out analysis. This analysis is either simple or advanced, depending on what you want to do. Simple analysis, you will find things like buffer. Buffer is you would want to know, for instance, people who are in a buffer zone, a road reserve zone, you want to clip is basically, if you have a shapefile for your country and you have rivers of Africa and you want to clip out specific rivers of your specific country, you basically use clip. Clip is just to extract what you have within a specific layer into what you want. Then union is like you're bringing these layers together, intersect, you have update. You can also erase the components in your shapefiles, those ones that you don't want. While raster analysis is can also be simple analysis and advanced depending on what you're interested in. Simple analysis in the raster is basically we are looking at how to develop a hill shape, a slope. These are simple things that you just go to the menu of QGIS and then you run. While advanced, you get support from Saga, for instance, you get support from graphs that you tend to carry out, maybe interpolation, run image classification. So those are the advanced tools that you can access. Now, how do we bring data into the software itself? In this case, I'm assuming that everyone has installed QGIS on his or her laptop. If you have not installed, you can basically Google, download QGIS, then you go to the QGIS platform and download the software for yourself, because it will help you to follow up this training and also practice tomorrow. So if you don't have the software, you may struggle today and tomorrow too. So my humble request is that you have the software. But if you are an advanced user, you please, we can assist each other here by showing your colleagues so that tomorrow becomes a bit easier for everybody. Now, from the Windows perspective, if you're using Windows, we normally go to Start. Then you, under Start, you look for the QGIS folder. Mine is 3.18. The recent is 1. The recent one is 1. It's 3.2. But in QGIS, as you go to download, you'll see the latest release and most stable. I would suggest that you go with the latest because the plugin that we developed works better with the recent updates or the recent versions of QGIS. Now, when you go into the folder, you'll see grass, you'll see OSGeo for W shell, you'll see the grass, or you'll see the designer interface and grass, then the setup. Now, for you to start QGIS, when you click into that folder, you have to look for QGIS desktop. Then if you're using a Mac, if you have this in your dock, you should probably call it in your dock. Just click on it or go into applications on your Mac laptop and get the QGIS will be there. Then when it opens, you'll see a window like what I'm seeing or what you're seeing, that it will have project, edit, view, layer, settings, plugin. And under project, why project, why not file? Because most softwares have the word file, but here the word is project. The assumption is that much as you're coming from these other softwares, in QGIS, you're looking at starting a project that will help us make decisions. So you're starting a project in idea. So when you start a new project, you will also start a project of printing this project. So in QGIS, we shall always go to project to start our analysis. And when our analysis is done, we shall go to new print layout. New print layout will give us functionalities to publish our maps, to add map elements, and to export them in different formats that we want. Could be PDF, could be JPEGs or SFG format, which is a scalar vector graphic file format. Now, this is how the software looks like. This software has panels, it has layers and a display window. So the display window is a window that we normally use for display analysis, playing around with our data sets. But then when we are done, we will go back to the project and call the print layout for publication of our map. We basically carry what has been published in the display into the publication window. So the software has project, edit, layer, settings, plugins, vectors, rasters, databases, and processing. I'll talk about a few, but the rest we'll learn as we move on. Now, for plugins, this refers that for instance, the model that we developed, the land productivity model, that model will be picked from the plugin window or from the plugin menu. Then for you, if you want to add data sets, how do you bring in data set here? The major one, what people always prefer the longest, there are 3 ways of adding data here, but for the start, I will use layers. If you go to layer, you will see add or create. Under layer, you can add or create. So whatever we need to add in the software, we shall be running to the layer menu. We add our data sets and then we display. Then for any analysis that you want to run, we shall be using vector if you're dealing with vectors. If you're dealing with the rasters, we shall be looking at the raster format. So if you have rasters, the essence here, we shall be going to the raster tool. Then there is what we call processing. Just like other GIS softwares, GIS is made of tools. So these tools give you functionalities to work. These functionalities, for instance, if I'm interested in vector analysis, I can go to processing, I go in the toolbox, look for analysis meant for rasters or vectors. If I'm interested in, for instance, I want to do to understand the shortest distance to my health facility, you can do this distance estimation from processing, soil erosion, hydrological modeling, everything that you want to run as a GIS user, you should be running the processing. Processing menu gives you, or it's a gateway to a number of tools in GIS that you use. Now, the panel you see has a number of small panels that are active, that are ticked. These panels, if you right-click after help, these panels are brought when you right-click after help, you will see a list of panels, but if you wanted to view them, you can go to the view menu also, and then you see toolbars. So these toolbars basically give you a shortcut for you to carry out analysis. For instance, you're seeing mine is layers panel, attributes toolbar, digitizing toolbar if I want to do advanced digitizing. If I want to manage my layers, I can also use a shortcut here. So it's a software that you should feel free to use. It's very easy and user-friendly. And I don't know why most people fear GIS, but I find this to be one of the easiest tools to use. Just actually, even your phones are more complicated than this software in terms of for you to search for distances and areas. But here you can estimate the distance from one point to the other using the ruler, and you see the ruler menus just around here. You can estimate the distance from one point to the other. So That's how it's designed. Now, in addition to adding layers, like I said, for us to call data sets, and I'm imagining you have downloaded data sets from the folder that we shared. It has Africa data sets. Those data sets are for you to use, but if you don't have those data sets, if you're an advanced user or intermediate, I would imagine you have some bit of shape files on your desktop. How do you bring these data sets? We'll go to add layer, vector layer, or raster layer. So you can see, if you want to bring in data sets, you can add either vector or rasters. What is added limited text layer? Added limited text layer means you can basically bring a CSV file of your coordinates captured in Excel file, and then you add it in the software. But there is also a plugin that you can bring this Excel file directly, but most times we prefer to use the limited CSV file in Excel. Now, when you activate the plugin, you'll see the plugins I've called. So adding plugins is showing you the plugins that I've called from online sources, because I wanted to enhance my analysis. I've called Google Earth into the software. I called into Fragstat. Fragstat is for it's for landscape fragmentation analysis, if you're interested in understanding the structures of the landscape. Now, the layers that we shall add, these need to be managed in terms of changing colors, labeling, changing symbols, or adding graphs, or even joining, because you can join an Excel file with your spatial geometry file, shape file. For any file that you're going to change the color, you're going to change the settings, you're going to label. The trick here is one, or there could be two. Will be, as starters, we shall be right-clicking, then you go to properties. The other option is you just double-click the layer of interest, then this box will open. So for us to label, I'll repeat, for us to label, to change colors, to do anything about or to do anything about changing the statistics in the geometry files, we'll be coming to the layer properties, and then we change this from here. For vector analysis, like I said, vector analysis, you can access analysis from the processing toolbox. Like I said, it has functionalities for you to run network analysis. Network analysis is about estimating the distances from one point to the other, carrying out terrain analysis, interpolation, and the screen on my right shows the vector geoprocessing. So there are other simple processing functionalities apart from buffering and clipping. We are seeing that you can differentiate, you can dissolve, you can intersect components, you can intersect geometry, you can join or union the geometry files in QGIS. Then for rasters, under rasters, you will see aspects, because you would be wondering which kind of analysis do I run under rasters, depending on what you have. Is it a continuous raster or a discrete raster? You'll see that we have a continuous raster. You can develop a hillshade for visualization. You can develop a slope map. You can also go ahead and extract contours from your terrain dataset. Now, the second view, or the second view from the data display window, is what we call a print layout. A print layout gives you capabilities to call the map that you have been analyzing from the display window onto the map publication layout. So in QGIS it is simpler that you basically go to project, print, new layout, then you get this window. Now this window will give you functionalities to call the map that has been displayed the other side. For instance, if I want to add the map which has been displayed the other side, I will basically click on add map. Then I draw a bounding box across my page. My page is on a landscape, but this can be changed. It also gives me functionalities or ways to insert my scale, a north arrow, a label. A label can be like the title of your map. But one thing I want you to note is that when we go into the layout, and if you want to generate a final map, the software will give you items. The items where you're seeing item properties and guides. So these give you functionalities to add the frame of the bounding box, the frame of your map, to add coordinates, to modify the legend and the layout itself. But if you want to export your map into a printable format, you can basically go to layout, then you export. You can export as an image. You can also export it as a PDF. You can also export it as a CSV, so that you can have your map that is well designed. But like I said, in cartography, the principles are simple. The map should communicate. You do not only design maps for walls for wall hanging, but with no message. So if you gave a politician this map that I've displayed here, for instance, what do you think the politician will get out of this map? How will the politician interpret this map? So we need, as technical GIS colleagues, that the maps we shall develop from land productivity, from what you do at work, should communicate to the decision makers that much as I'm planning to develop this map in either QGIS software or any other platform you're comfortable with, please, we need to communicate and publish. One of the limitations that we have today on our continent is that we do a lot of work, but we don't publish. No one knows about what we are doing. No one knows about, for instance, if someone asked you about a map of the COVID-19 pandemic in your country, do you have that map at hand? Do you know who created that map? So these are things that we need to come in as experts. We need to come in as experts and learn and then also join in to develop such maps. But I'm well aware that for you to come up with such a map, you really need mandates from the government, mandated institutions like the health ministries. But let's use the tool to solve problems. As I said earlier, the QGIS will give you formats to export your map. It can be a PNG, JPEG, PDF, CSV, BMP, but because a CSV is equivalent to an Adobe Illustrator file format, which is AI. So these are formats that the software can use to export your map. I don't know if there are questions so far, but that is the take-home exercise. that's the take-home exercise that I'd wish that if you're not very conversant, you start by developing a map of your country first, using the data sets that are in the Google Drive. You develop a map of your country, and in that map of your country, you put water bodies, rivers, and the geology. So the layers are in the Google shared drive, but I expect you to save your map as a PNG format. I won't talk about the formats, which one is better, but that is for another day. So that is the exercise. So between now and 1 p.m. tomorrow, before the next session, I'll be assisting those ones who are stuck online, who are trying to develop the maps. So if you develop your map, you can send it to us so that we give you marks. So I would like to stop here. If there are questions, I can have the questions. If there are no questions, then we can move to the practical bit. I demonstrate how you should achieve this exercise, and we call it a day. So, colleagues, are there any questions before we move into the software?
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, this is Ambrose. Mine is on, my query is on the data. We have ARC 1960 and WGS 1984. What is the difference in terms of accuracy? If one used ARC 1964 or if one used WGS 1984, I mean ARC 1960 or WGS 1984. The difference in terms of accuracy, plus or minus. Thank you.
My question is on the GIS data source. There's somewhere you mentioned that even a report can be used, but I wonder what kind of report. Any report can be used as a GIS, as the source of GIS data, or it depends on the kind of report.
Can I respond? In terms of WGS and the ARC 1960, what is it's an interesting question, but it goes back to how you would want the accuracy of what you're doing. For instance, depending on your country, you find that some surveyors, if they are looking at plots at a smaller scale, they will have maybe working in ARC 1960. But then if you're working in GIS today, you've seen that most colleagues in the GIS sector have copied the global data. But in terms of accuracy, I don't want to be specific on which one is better at the moment, but I'll leave it open that it depends on the usability and the interest and the goal of what you're doing. Because sometimes you'll find that even WGS, the accuracy, I'm not saying that WGS accuracy is bad, but the accuracy is also good, but not comparable to the country-specific datums that are being developed over time. Then a colleague asked you, how do you bring data from a report? If, for instance, I'm looking at a population report of Kenya or Uganda, and I'm looking at the district population figures, I can enter those figures in my attribute table of a particular district of interest. So I can have data set from the report that can be figured into the attribute table and then represented to give a highlight or visualize the aspects of GIS. So, in the interest of time, I beg that I proceed with the demonstration of the software. Then we can have these questions coming in more as we move on.
Mr. Bernard.
Yes, please.
I have a simple question before we move on.
Yes. Yes.
Now, me, I'm called Primus, and I think I've been using ArcGIS, ArcMap, for almost like 5 years. So this ArcGIS looks good to me, and as well you. But what I need to know the files I'm using in ArcGIS or ArcMap. Can I use them as well in quantum GIS, or I have to transfer them?
Hello. You know, if you have your data sets in an organized folder, the same data sets can display in both systems because the software is built to access to access data sets with the schemas developed under S3, which is the S3 shapefile, and also the GeoPackage. GeoPackage is now a new file format on board. It can also be displayed in QGIS. But it's an interesting question that, like I said, if you have been trained in ArcGIS, it's something I've seen with the GIS users for over 20 years, that whoever is trained, for instance, in ILWIS or in ILWIS is an open source software, will always want to carry out analysis in ILWIS. Whoever was trained in ArcView, which is ArcGIS today, will always want to run analysis in ArcGIS. So the flexibility of accommodating other softwares, I've noticed over time that GIS users do not want to be interfered with what they have from ArcMap to QGIS, but generally all these things do the same thing. What's critical here is that it's the cost. For instance, at the institution, we used to pay concurrent ArcGIS concurrent licenses over $3,000. Now, if you compare that with just going online and using this tool, so for me, it's a plus for everybody, and for government, for private sector, and NGOs. And as I demonstrated, QGIS, when it started, it used to be a light software, and the user community had not grown. But today, the user community has grown, and it has interesting things that because people are contributing a number of analytical tools in the software. For instance, if you look at now the land productivity tool that we developed, you'll be able to download it easily wherever you are than could have been on the ArcGIS platform if it's not concurrent or online. But it's a pretty simple and easy software to use. So, can we have more questions in the chat?
There is a hand from Emmanuel, and I think there is a question in the chat. So if you can just clear the air, then we go to the next part of the presentation.
Okay.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, please.
The question is to know the difference between ArcGIS and the QGIS. But I think the trainer said about it. I get the answer. Thank you.
What's the difference between the locator map and the inset? An inset, you see a locator map, sometimes you have seen the maps, you're on, let me see. The difference, for instance, you're in Uganda, but someone in Europe will not know exactly the district where you're doing research from. So you'll have to start with the map of Africa, then you highlight Uganda, then you have your map displayed. So that's a locator map. Then the other question is, how sustainable is QGIS compared to ArcGIS? I think QGIS is now more sustainable because the user community has grown. But as before, the community was small. But with the inclusion of Saga, Grass, the community is quite enormous. And but I don't want to underscore ArcGIS. It's also a good software, I'm not distributing. But so in terms of sustainability, you yourself, you are available, a giant peer, you are available to contribute to QGIS, because QGIS is you. The other way to maintain, to make it sustainable, you can contribute, you can pay some little money so that the contributors or plugins can continue adding on more. Does QGIS do object-based analysis? Yes, there is a tool. If you go in the processing, there is a tool called the OTB. It does. Yes, Jesse has answered. There's a tool called OPIA. It does so in the QGIS. You can do it. Plus, even supervised and unsupervised classification, you can run all these image analytical analysis in the tool. So, Chair, I think those are the questions in the chat.
Yes.
So, the other one is,
one more hand and then we go to the next.
which plugins are more essential for surveying work? Which plugins are essential for surveying work? Depending at which level of surveying you are. Are you at data collection? Are you at analytical? Are you at plot labeling? So there are tools at different stages. For instance, if I'm labeling, there is a custom labeling tool for parcels. There is a tool for even partitioning parcels. That which is not which functionality you may not get when you're using the normal digitizing. So there are different tools across the surveying cycle that you can use to survey your land or survey anything that you're interested in. Because if you want to download irrigation, crop fields, data, maps, tea plantations, which site. Now, depending on your country, normally, for instance, Uganda Bureau of Statistics, Kenya Bureau of Statistics, Rwanda, Ethiopia, the statistical bureaus normally have the national specific data sets on the plantations. Otherwise, when you get the ones at the global level, you may not get more details in terms of production. And also, if you're interested in, for instance, tea, specific crops, you can go to your district, because the districts normally have production officers. They have these statistics, which you can get on paper and factor into your analysis. So, Sugira is probably, Elisha will give you the link to access the data sets, but I must agree that with you that most of these data sets, the global data sets, even the regional data sets are available online. If you can access the website for the Regional Center for Mapping and Source Development, you can get data sets for the IGAD region, especially for the member states. You can get some shape files. So can I proceed to the demonstration?
Yes, okay. I think you can go on with the demonstration.
So this is my screen, and you may, if you don't have QGIS, or if you have QGIS, it's something that because if you install it, you'll see QGIS, and then you'll have to click on the desktop, because the desktop it has QGIS desktop. Then you'll see your version. Is it 3.18? Is it 3.2 or 3.16? So there are different versions. And this is how you can access your QGIS. Sometimes the software, when you install it, it creates a shortcut on your desk. There's a folder there called QGIS on your desk. You'll see shortcuts that you can also go in and basically download or click on QGIS desktop. So if you click on QGIS desktop, you'll get a panel like this. And like I said before, the tool, I'll start with the tools you're seeing. These are mobile tools, they are movable tools. They can basically be docked anywhere you want. And how do you get these tools? The shortest or the shortcut is I right-click after my help, then I see a list of the tools, the functionalities of these tools that I have. And then when I come to project, you see new. New for me is a new project. You can open, you can save your project. It's very critical that when you're starting your project, you have to save. You save your project, because if your laptop collapses, then you lose everything. The other bit is print layout. Print layout is, like I said, you have two views. We have the display view and then the map publication view, which is the print layout. Print layout is for publishing maps. And if I click on it, it will prompt me to give it just a name. But we shall look at it later. So that's what we have under project. You have new, you have print layout, and also exit. Some of you are very fast when you're stuck at exiting. You exit, restart, or exit, restart. So it's critical that you save your project before you exit. Then under editing, you can copy features and paste. View, what is important under view here is the toolbars. You see, the toolbars can be activated when you right-click after help, or you can activate your toolbar by simply going to View, Layers panel, then you tick. For instance, if I'm going to digitize, I'll dwell more on digitizing toolbars, where you see digitizing. Manage layers is for me to manage layers. Then there's what we call selection toolbar, which helps you to select which district, which administrative boundary, which are interested in, or do you intend to select. Then layer gives you functionalities to add whether a vector, raster, or an Excel file, but it could also be it could also be a Google or a Google satellite image that can also be factored in the tool. But if we want to create shapefiles ourselves, we'll be going to create layer, and then you select new shapefile. The new geo package layer is a new file format that is now on board, but what's common today is a shapefile. So if you want to create a shapefile of a point, either by the shapefile I'm meaning the vectors. It could be a point, a line, or polygon. So if you want to create any of these, you'll have to go to layer, create layer, and then new shapefile. Then settings is okay. Nothing much here unless if you want to change processing. But for plugins, if I want to manage my plugins, I will click on plugins. So the software will fetch plugins online that are installed for use. Like if I want to do land productivity, are you seeing the land productivity plugin? Hello. Is everybody able? Yes. So this is the plugin that we developed, which will be demonstrated. On Thursday. But then someone asked, which plugin can I use for surveying? If you just come to the plugins here and then you type in survey, you can see there's a land survey called import plugin. So there are a number of plugins, functionalities which you may bring on board, and these plugins may not be easily accessible in ArcGIS or any other commercial software, but with the QGIS, because the community is big, so you can get added functionalities of the tool here. So if you wanted to add Google Earth, I basically add a Google Earth engine in my QGIS instead of installing Google Earth independently, but I can add a plugin in the QGIS software. So it gives you added functionality of plugins that are available online. Then for vectors, like I said, vectors is basically for simple analysis. I would call it simple analysis because here we are basically clipping and buffering and doing simple estimations. Rasters, under rasters, like I said, you can generate slope maps, you can generate aspects of terrain, you can develop contours for your area. For instance, if you have a terrain, you can add it and add contours here. Database, I will go to processing. Processing is a toolbox that gives you functionalities. For instance, for vector analysis, that I'll come here and analyze my vectors. I will do analysis of categories. I will do analysis of K-means clustering, which is more of unsupervised classification system. You can categorize, like if you have different land uses and you want to categorize land uses per district, for instance, you can use by categories. If you're the one who asked about OBIA, about segmentation in QGIS, are you seeing the tool for segmentation? That's the tool for segmentation in QGIS. It's there. Saga gives you functionalities to do climate analysis, hydrology, geostatistics, It also gives you to do analysis of hydrology, fire analysis, and climate. So there are many functionalities that you can access. You can access from the toolbox. And as I said, the toolbox is just like other softwares. There are other functionalities that you can add on the tool and use. So this is the toolbox, the processing toolbox. So when you get to analysis, before you call on people to help you, it's good to run into the processing toolbox. There is a search tool. If I'm interested in segmentation, I'll just basically type segmentation, then it will give me functionalities of segmentation. If I want to do maybe image analysis, you'll see functionalities of emissivity, you'll see functions of clustering image. There's even a functionality of biomass estimation under GIS. So the tool has a number of extended use that you can explore at your free time. But for today's class, I will close the processing. And then there are tools that are very critical. For instance, these are the tools that are very critical. The map navigation toolbar. It's very critical because for it has a pan. That hand allows you to pan your map, to rotate your map, to move your map in the display window. It has the zoom in, zoom out, and then full extent. Full extent, you're basically looking at bringing back your map. Then selection. This is the selection toolbar that you'll be using to select tools and deselect. Then for identification of features, this one gives you ways of identifying features. Now, how do I bring in data sets here? It's pretty simple. I'll go back to layer. But I want you to notice that the terms are changing. I started with a vector. I went to shapefile. Now I'm in a layer. So a layer encompasses both a vector and a raster. I hope that is clear. These terms are changing. We started with a vector. We went to raster. Then from under vector, we went to points, lines, and polygons. But now, the layers, the term layer is also coming on board because a layer in simple terms is encompasses both a vector and a raster. That's what it means. So I will come here and add my layer. I'm going to show you the 3 ways of bringing in. So I'll click, because I want to bring in Africa. I will add in the vector layers first. I'll browse. Now when I browse, I'll see so many files in my folder. How do I bring in these files? The other way is to click on SHP. SHP is the geometry file. So if you click on Africa, because Africa boundary has so many file extensions, they have different extensions. You have SHP, you have SHX, you have CPG, DBF. But for you, if you want to display this layer, you'll basically go to the one with SHP. SHP is the geometry file that you add. The other way, even, you can look at the size of the file. The SHP file has a higher capacity, storage capacity, than the rest of the other files. Now, the other way around is to go to all files and then look for S shape files, because the files are the files we are working with, the SHP file is based on the S3 data format. So if I click on S3 shapefile, you'll find that I only have 5 layers or 5 shape files, and the ones you're seeing with SHP. These are displayed because I've selected the selection by type. Now, if I add all these files together, because you can add one by one, or you can select all the files and you add them at once. So I can.
Sorry, but you don't have those data.
The dataset is in the shared folder. It's called Africa Datasets. So it's easily accessible. They will share the link so that you can access the datasets too. So if I add, this is how it looks like. This is, for instance, Africa. Now, for me to move Africa across, I'll have to use this pan. You see, this pan allows me to move my layer across. Now, if this layer disappears and it's somewhere there, how do I bring it back? Supposing it disappears from my display. One of the techniques is, you see, zoom full. Zoom full is for you to bring back that layer onto the display window. The other aspect is you can come to the table of contents, which is layers, and right-click, then zoom to layers. So this is very critical. It comes back, so you can zoom out, you can zoom in, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. You can select, the selection feature enables you to select any country of your choice. So the selection tool is basically for you to select areas of your interests. Now, if you're going to create a map of your area, you basically select that tool and then you call it out. Then identify, I can deselect. The identify tool gives me what that layer encompasses in the table here. But one aspect that you must note that these layers normally have attributes behind, like an attribute table. I've right-clicked Africa boundary, then this is the attribute table. Are you seeing the attribute table? This is okay, it's fine. The attribute table of that file is here. So this is the attribute table. So the attributes are about the names of what the countries you're seeing. So if you're adding statistics from maybe a graph about countries or the COVID cases per country, you can create a field here. A column is called a field in the attributes, so that you display your statistics based on the fields here. So the table gives you added functionalities to know the area or the size of this country. You can do it in the attribute table here. You can also add statistics in this attribute table here. You can also, by the way, you can add an Excel file and you add it onto this attribute table if you're doing analysis. So when it comes to the polygons, so this is how polygons look like. This is how polygons look like. So if I want to add rivers.
Rogers, kind of mute, please.
These are rivers. These are global data sets, and I'm using them for training purposes. But I know you can get those that are well refined at country scale, basing on your country. If you don't have those of your country, you can consult the mapping agency in your area of or in your jurisdiction. So these are lines, and if I add points, I can add points and water bodies. So I've added points. So these are points. Now, what I've displayed is an arrow of the vector data format. You have points. Points are towns. You have polygons. Polygons are lakes. The district, which are the administrative boundaries, are also polygons. Now, how do you bring in raster datasets? For rasters, I'll come to layer again, add raster. In the same folder, because as I said, rasters can have different formats. The raster can be in an image format, it can be in an ASCII format, it can also be a JPEG, but the raster we have today is in a Geotiff format. And in a Geotiff format, if I add, this is a raster, and if I zoom in, you should be seeing, this is the modis images we shall be dealing with tomorrow. So it's in a raster format, and it's a continuous raster. It's a continuous raster. So this is what you will see from the modis images. If I add an Africa boundary layer, by the way, you can move these layers on top of the other. So you can move Africa below. If I have water bodies, can I move water bodies on top of the raster image? So you can move these layers in the layers panel, or you can align them the way you want. So they're a bit flexible. Now, the display here, it shows that I have a raster which is a satellite image in the background. I have points. I have lakes, which are polygons. The administrative layers are also in a polygon format. But if I want to change the colors of my lake from green to something different, I said you shall be coming to properties. You right click, you go to properties. Are you able to see my layers property panel?
Yes.
Yes, now in the layers property, because it's a lake, in the my layers property, there are things we shall be doing from here. You have labels, you have joins, you have symbols. Now, for my lake, I will click on the color, then change the color of my lake, and then the color of my lake will change. Now, if I want to increase the boundary width of my future, I'll right click again, Africa boundary, come to properties, then I come to line, and then maybe there's something I need to show you. Sometimes, remember our map was like this before? So for you to remove the background colors, how do you remove the background colors? You basically go back to the layers panel, you right click, the layer of interest. Don't right click the layers anyhow, but you must right click the layers, then you go to properties. Under properties, I'll have my panel. Now, the shortcut here, the easiest way here, you go to, you click on symbol layer type, then you move down to a simple line because you just want a simple line. And then I'll have my boundary. Here, the most highlighted. So these layers also can be ticked or unticked. Now, if I can take it back, to simple fill, want simple fill, if I can have simple fill. Now, for the exercise I've provided, for instance, if I'm from Rwanda, I will select Rwanda out of my map using this select tool. But if I want to extract out Rwanda from the broader layer of Africa, I right click, come to export. Now, here I'm only saving what is selected. What is selected here is Rwanda, so I will save this in a format of S3. The file name will be, because you have to save this in your working folder, I can create a new file. And create a new file. I'll name mine Rwanda. So the layers will be, I'll name mine Rwanda. I will not change the CRS because of the scale I'm working at. So I have Rwanda. So I have Rwanda there. Now in Rwanda, I have to extract out the water bodies that fall within Rwanda because they are water bodies. At this moment, I'm going to show you to extract, but sometimes when you're developing maps in the cartographical principle, sometimes you can leave some of these larger water bodies to overlap or as base layers. But in this case, I'm only demonstrating how you can clip out. So how do I clip out Rwanda? I'll go to vectors, geoprocessing. So the clipping tool is going to give me functionalities of getting out Rwanda from the broader lake boundaries or water boundaries. So I will click. Now the input here, the input should be water bodies. Then the overlay layer should be Rwanda, because the input layer should be the broader one. Could be the water bodies, the rivers, and geology. Then the overlay layer is that specific country-specific layer, which is Rwanda. Then the clip layer, I will save this to my file, and under my file, I will save to my working folder. And in my working folder, I'll put water bodies. These are open water bodies. Then run. So I'll deactivate. So I have my Rwanda with the water bodies. Then rivers. So I want to get rivers that fall within Rwanda. I'll do the same for rivers. Because I'm dealing with vectors, I'll come to vectors, geoprocessing, clip, and then I put Africa rivers. Overlay layer is Rwanda. I will save this to file, rivers. So I have my rivers. Then the other bit is geology. I will come to vector still, geoprocessing tools, clip, clip, that's geology for Africa. So I will clip out Rwanda. I'll use geology. And then Rwanda. So the overlay should be that specific area of interest. Geology. So I have these layers. I have geology for Rwanda, I have water bodies. So I'll bring, because when you clip, you have these layers, but with different colors. Then I have my Rwanda here. When you clip, you have different colors. Now, the next phase is to make sense of our colors. We have to make sense of our display, of the data that we have on board here. So I will start with Rwanda itself. Because it's a district, it's an administrative international boundary. I'll go to properties, then simple fill. I will click on simple fill. Of course, you can use the fill style as no brush. Sometimes you can come here and say no brush, but the easiest would be the outline should be a simple line. I will increase the width of my line. I hope I'm clear. So I know the other question will be why Rwanda? Why not Tanzania or Kenya or so? So if I come to properties again, I want to label. Under the layers property, you see labels. Then single labels. Under single labels, you see that you can change the fonts of your labels. You can have to label. You can label by the country name. Because this is text, you can also increase the size of the font. like that way, you have Rwanda as a country. Then the water bodies of Rwanda, you see the colors not changed. Now I want to change the colors. I said you can right click, go to properties, or alternatively you can double click. Now you have to right click the water bodies for Rwanda. Simple fill, click on the fill color. I give it a color. Rivers. I will change the colors of my rivers in Rwanda. The rivers in Rwanda. I can increase the size of rivers, or I can reduce them a bit depending on, of course, I'll put 0. The width I'll put 0. I just want to reduce the size of the river lines. Then the geology. How do I put the geology? I'll right click, come to properties. Now the geology, of course, you have geology of different categories. So you have geology of different categories, and this is categorized under symbology. You go to categories. Of course, we have single symbols, but I'm using categorical because these are, you want to categorize by the geological types. That's why I selected categories. Then I clicked on classify because I'm looking for the classes within the geology of Rwanda. So I have the geology of Rwanda. Now, but the geology of Rwanda is covering my rivers and lakes. So what I'll do, I'll bring this a little bit down. Sorry. I'll bring it a little bit down. And then I'll move my Rwanda on top so that the boundary is a bit thick. So my boundary for Rwanda is a bit thick. So I have the geology of Rwanda, I have the water bodies, I have the rivers, I have Rwanda itself. So this is what I expect you to practice overnight. So assuming I'm done with my analysis, what I will do, I intend to publish this map. Now for me to publish this map, I will have to go back to the project menu, and under the project menu, I will click on the print layout, like I said earlier. So I will say map, I'll give it a different name, just a name map. So I want to call the map that I've displayed. This is the print layout screen, which gives you capabilities to publish your map. So what this means is that I have to call the map which has been processed to the other side onto my publication page here. So, but to do this, I will have to come to add map. When I click add map, it will give me a cursor to draw a bounding box around my page. So I will click on add a map. So when I draw, it will give me my map. Now this map, if you look at my page, it has layout, it also has item properties. I don't know if you're seeing item properties where I'm pointing with my cursor, it's on my right. Now, if I want to increase on my frame of this map, I'll roll down. Is my map visible to everybody? Yes. So this map, I'll put it in a frame, and this frame I can increase the thickness of the frame. Maybe give it any color that I want. So I can increase the frame of this map, but when you're mapping, you need to have the cartography in your mind. If you're dealing with Rwanda and in the flag of Rwanda there is blue, so I will put blue to reflect the flag of Rwanda, not yellow or the other one. So you need to be like, if you're developing maps for certain works, certain organizations, sometimes you need to customize your maps according to the needs of according to the organizational themes. Now, from here, this map I will add, I will go back to add item. Remember, I started with map. I will add label. Label is a title. Where do you want to put your title? I want to put it here. It will give me that. But then it will bring for you, in the item properties. So in the item properties, if I want to increase the font size of my title, I'll click on font, and font will give me capabilities to increase the font of my map. That's the font of my map. Then if I go back to item properties, I will add a legend. The legend, this is my legend, it's long, but I'll show you how to modify it. I will add my scale. That's my scale. I'll go back to add the item, add the north arrow. Good. So I'm just trying to reduce. If I want to increase the size of my map, how do I do it? You see, I want to increase the size of my map. I'll go to scale. Are you seeing where there is scale? So on the scale, I'll reduce my scale to increase the size. Mine is 18, so I'll put 16. Then I type enter. Let me I'll put 14. Just reducing the scale, because if you reduce the scale, the bigger the map displays. So then thereafter I will move the items. This is the icon for moving that map, because when you increase the scale, it keeps on enlarging and then you want to position it. So I will move items, because you can put it anywhere that you want in the page. But for my case, I'll put it here. Now I want to edit. I want to edit the legend. For you to edit the legend, whatever you want to edit in this layout, you have to click on it. It cannot be editable unless you have clicked on it. If it is a frame, it's a north arrow, it's a scale, or title, you have to click on it. So I've clicked on my legend. So if you click on the legend, you will see the legend itself, it appears. So I'll include the legend title. I'll include the legend, and I'll include the legend title. Now, there is what we call legend items. But below, you can prompt the machine to basically display only those legends that are inside the current atlas future. Now, if you scroll down, there is normally only show items inside the linked map. So I've just ticked on that, and then I can also put my legend in a frame. So I'll have my legend in a frame. So that's my legend in a frame. So I want to insert a location map just to show that this is Africa and this is where Rwanda comes from. So the trick here is that you click on the frame again for your map. Then in the item properties, I don't know if you're seeing item properties. In the item properties, you lock these layers. You see, you lock. Locking means if you change the other side, here it automatically is also interfered with. It's not like in ArcMap that, even in ArcMap, if you change in the display window, it also automatically changes in the layout panel. So here I want to change. I want to lock the layers so that if I change the colors the other side, they should be the same colors, or they should reflect. The colors should not reflect any changes that I make the other side. So I'll stop sharing this, but with the trick that I've shown you is that I've basically locked my layers, lock layers and lock styles, because the styles I want them to be locked. So if I go back to the main QGIS panel, this is the panel. So if I change anything here, it will automatically not be affected the other side because I locked the layers. So here I can dismantle. All these layers and I only have Africa boundary. Then I want to label Rwanda. So I'm trying to change Rwanda. I'll remove the label here. Then I'll change the boundary for Africa to simple line. But a black color. So I just want to show someone that this is where Rwanda is located on the map of Africa. So I want to take this map onto the map I developed for Rwanda. But remember the trick was that I locked the layers the other side. So I'll stop sharing here. Then I go back to my map. So, are you seeing my map?
Yes.
So I want to add. So I'm going to add the map I've just added in Rwanda from the other side, and you see, much as I dismantled, my map is still intact here. So I'll come to add the item, then I add map. I draw a bounding box. So my Rwanda has come. Now I need to increase a little bit. So I remove items in my map. Then I can put it also in a frame, so that it's in a frame. I'll put maybe I'll put it in my frame. I can reduce it depending on the size you want. So you can do anything. You can reduce the size, but you'll see all the maps that someone creates such a map, then it draws a line from Rwanda to the entire country. You have seen such maps, but in the recent cartography, you basically have a location map, and such a map is very critical for you if you're following up this video today. This exercise should be a gateway for you at work to increase your value at work, and also if you're a student, you should be able to learn how to see and appreciate how you can increase or you can improve the quality of publishing your maps. So when it comes to export, I'll go to layout. I can export as an image. I can export it as a CSV. I can export it as a PDF. Now let me export as an image. I'll put it in my training folder. I'll put it here, map. Now, the software asks me for the export resolution because the default is 300. You know, 300 is transferable on mail, but the moment you increase to 400, so that means you'll have to use a Google Drive to transfer this map to your colleague. But also in publication, you normally see that you need a high resolution of maybe 400 to 600. So this is where we increase the resolution from. So I'll save, I'll leave it at 300. Then if I open my Word document or Word file, I just want to show you that map I've developed. I'll stop sharing and then come to my Word file. In Word file, I'll come to insert picture, and from a device, then I'll insert my map. So this is my map, simple map. Much as you may not be seeing the grids, I know there's some of you, where are the grids, but this is now a simple map. But if you want to add the grids, it's also easier that you scroll down and then you draw the coordinates. Colleagues from here, I don't know if I've been able to prepare you for tomorrow, or to convince you that everything is possible. In QGIS, you can do a lot of displays. You can develop your organizational, printable, publishable, high quality maps. I'm emphasizing high quality maps because I've seen maps that come through publications from students, from government entities. Our maps are not good in terms of quality. If you been doing GIS over time, you will accept with me that we need a lot of capacity building to improve how we display our maps. I want to stop here, unless if there are questions, challenges, that for the rasters, you can display and then explore, because in the interest of time, you can refer to our materials, but for now, I basically wanted to prepare you to get used to QGIS and how you can generate a simple map. So, Chair, thank you, unless there are questions, that because I know for the first time users, maybe it seems I'm in my own world, they're also in their own world. I want to bring them on board so that we agree on certain things. If they are willing to go and explore, then maybe in the course of tonight and tomorrow morning, I can be able to assist them through the platforms that we have, like the Google Classrooms. So thank you, Chair. Let me hear from the participants of issues that need to be solved. How do you get one? How from the charts? How do you crop out from a specific country? How do you clip out a specific country? I'll go back to that. How do you extract from a specific country? I'm going to demonstrate it again. Under properties here, I'm just trying to change a few things. Simple field. So, if this is my Africa, and I'm from Congo, I want to extract my DRC map. So I will select it. What is critical here is to understand the tool for selection. This is the tool for selection. So you can select one country, you can select more than one. So I've selected. Thereafter, right click, export. I'm now saving selected. Otherwise, if you save it as a future, you'll not have it. But you must save as selected for you to have. And if I click on Save Selected Features, I will name this DRC, then Add. So you'll see that my map is extracted for DRC. The latest version user guide can be shared. This can repeat the exercise. Maybe the video will be shared so that you can follow this at your convenience. You know, working from home, sometimes you all work, sometimes you get interruptions, especially when you're supposed to report to your bosses or give outputs. You can refer to the video and repeat some of the steps I've followed so that you master. Otherwise, we are still available for guidance. How do you insert the author of the map? The author of the map, because those are map credits. For map credits, you still go back to add items. And the other items, by the way, you can also add a picture. You can add your organizational label, organizational logo, your flag. You can add, now, if you add the author, the map credits, you want to add the date, you want to add the page number, project author. Are you seeing add item? You go to the menu for dynamic text, which is the project author, and if you click on it, so you can type the project author, maybe Stephen. So, for the project author, I can add something. I can even put my name, Stephen's name there as a project author. So you can add anything that you want, project Stephen, for maybe. Maybe you can also put the date, maybe you can have something like this, author. Yeah. So you can have a number of aspects captured in your map. So, for better understanding, like Margaret is suggesting, if you registered, you'll have to get the video and follow. But it's something that you need time to sit down and internalize some of the things. What we have shown you today is an intro, it's brainstorming. It's something like an ice on a cake that there's a lot behind, or a lot in the cake that you're ought to explore and learn. And most times I normally share with the colleagues that if you have this technology at hand, then there are so many opportunities that exist on the continent, that exist worldwide, because you can teach. So we are training you to also go and train others out of this workshop, and also appreciate that the technology exists and we must work with it, because there's no way you're going to run away from the GPS. There's no way you're going to run away from plotting your data sets from the field. The only way to do this is to bring your GPS data sets into the software and you start working. Otherwise, for now, I would call it an end. But please keep the questions coming. I don't know if other members have received the data sets or the software so that you try it tonight. Then we see your progress as we move on. Otherwise, it's you to let us know where you're stuck, then we can assist you. Yes, Chair, can I hand over back to you?
Thank you very much, Doctor. I want to applaud you on behalf of all participants for this wonderful session. It has been very educative, and I believe there are some first-time users of QGIS. I believe you've met some interesting challenges today. Unfortunately, we can't let Doctor answer all the questions because of time, but don't worry, everything is set. We have classrooms just outside this session. We have Google Classrooms prepared for you. Links were shared to your different personal emails. So you will be able to interact with Doctor, or even those who still have questions for Professor, you will be able to interact with him even in those classes. So just post your questions in those Google Classrooms, and Doctor or any other facilitator will be at your service. So it has been a very long yet worthy session, and we've had Doctor take us through a number of very key concepts for this course, starting from the brief introduction to GIS, where he introduced us to also concepts of location, the introduction to QGIS itself, where we also explored the QGIS UI, or the user interface. We went through those different raster data, spatial analysis, and how to add and display your data in QGIS. And after developing your maps, how do you extract them, the different formats, you know? And the first session he gave an assignment. And for those who have challenges with the assignment, still, yes. So I was saying, for those who have challenges with the assignment, you can interact with your fellow participants within the Google Classroom. We encourage this collaboration because we are here to learn and also have this deeper exposure and networking for people within this field. We have, in case you are unable to maybe in case you're unable to access the Google Classrooms, you can send an email to info@geomik.com. GEO-MIK Africa, sorry, info@geomikafrica.com, and they will be able to assign you a classroom or direct you to a facilitator to help out directly with your query. So we've come to the end of day 2 of our training session. Just a recap is this training is an outcome from the Land Productivity Analysis project that was implemented under the GMS and Africa program, and that is supported by the African Union and implemented by the Regional Center of Mapping of Resources for Development in Kenya. And in day 1, we had Professor Majaliwa taking us through land productivity concepts and methodology estimation of soil productivity. And in case you have any, we shared out material regarding Professor's presentation. That is the PowerPoints and even a video of the session. And then we came to day 2, which is today. We've had Dr. Bernard talking about the overview of GIS and QGIS, as I earlier mentioned. And I can assure you that after this session, you'll be able to receive all the material, including the PowerPoint that he has been using, and all the links to different Google Drive links where all the content for day 2 are stored, including the QGIS software. So in case of any query still, you can refer to info@geomikafrica.com for any clarification. And I want to remind all participants to please come back tomorrow, because we are going to start evaluation. We shall be starting evaluation of this course tomorrow. And at the end of the training, there will be every participant who will participate in the evaluation will be awarded with a certificate of attendance. So I want to encourage you to stick around until the end and also give us your evaluation from the training. It's now in Uganda, we are at, it's 5:02 East African time. And I would like to thank everyone who has attended this training. It has been a very wonderful and educative session. And we hope to see you all tomorrow, same time, which is 2 p.m. East African time, or 1400. Have a good evening, and thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Yes, we thank you.
Many thanks. It was a great day today.
Thank you for training. We highly appreciate.
Thank you. Sorry, can I ask please a question?
Yes, you can ask.
Normally, these courses are very interesting and we have really appreciated. So your invitation, and we are really eager to follow everything that you are giving to us. But the problem here in the email that we got in the morning at around 10, at around 11 o'clock, it has been mentioned that the course will start at 2 p.m. GMT. And here in Rwanda, if it is like 2 p.m. GMT, it means that it is around 4 p.m. here in Rwanda. Can we get clarification about this?
Sorry, Laundry, for, is it Laundry? Yes, sorry for the misinformation. It is actually 2 p.m. East African time, and that should be, I think, 1 p.m. in Rwanda. 1 p.m. That is the fixed time. Yes, 1 p.m. in Rwanda. Yes.
1 p.m.
It's 1 p.m.
So, and it's constant time. We shall be using the same time, but different links will be shared for each day. So just keep out for the emails, but that is the time for all the sessions. Thank you. Sorry for the misinformation.
Thank you very much, sir.